was in Fargo this last week. They even went to a liquor store. I didn't pay any attention to see what was available.
Even signage to see how they advertise.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting.
Because usually if I'm going in for one or two
Right.
things, and then I'm coming out, I
Yep.
don't pay attention to the rest of the clutter.
Well, now you can pay attention, just out of curiosity.
Ready?
You ready? All right, start meeting with the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, everyone. First item on our agenda for the work session is True County Appraisal. Yep.
Good morning.
Morning.
I guess you have all the information, so I think we're just here to help answer questions and kind of talk through logistics of how we think or how this is going to work. But basically, we see a problem coming in the next couple of years when we have people that are retiring, and local assessors is kind of a position that's not, you don't get a lot of local assessors going into the field, just based on how the county does their appraising. So we are unique in the sense that we have all outside of county staff doing, or all local assessors doing our appraising. And so eventually, as people retire, and we're gonna have districts that don't have local assessors, which is kind of where it ultimately still falls on us to have the responsibility of making sure the assessment is done. We do have one contract right now that we are working with, that is with Nevis Township. So what we're proposing and looking to do is currently being done in one of the townships. I believe it's working well. I do see that he is here, so he can speak if that's, if he has questions or concerns about it. But I guess I'm not sure what all and other information or questions you guys would have on it.
So the general background is that we're one of few counties that has not elected True County Appraisal, meaning that the county is going to be, we're always responsible for getting the valuations out. But to this point, the townships and the other local taxing authorities have had contracts with with independent appraisers who are doing the work and then handing it off to our staff. So there's two parts of that. When we run out of people who are able to do that, we're still gonna be responsible for the other, and we won't have any way to do the field work. So the proposal is that, and the statute requires that if the county elects to go True County Appraisal, it doesn't become effective until the second appraisal date, which means if we take action before January 2nd, it wouldn't take effect until January 2nd, 2028. We know we're gonna have a problem by that point in time. We also don't have in-house staff that have the field experience necessary to train the staff who are either licensed or working towards licensure to be able to do that. Our estimate is that it's gonna take 3 or 4 staff to do the work that 4 or 5 independent appraisers are doing if we have to take all of it on.
We have 7 local assessors right now.
7 local assessors, okay. So if a township, if a taxing authority has a contract that they're satisfied with, we would honor that, but we would have to hold the contract under this proposal on behalf of the township. And we would work with those local appraisers as long as they're available to continue to do that work. We would add staff as we have gaps throughout that point in time. The townships and the taxing authorities are still responsible for being certified and conducting their own local board of appeal. We never take that over for them. They're still always responsible for that. So it doesn't change very much, except in the near term, what it would mean is that we would hold the contract on behalf of the taxing authority rather than them holding it directly with a local appraiser. And we would staff up as the gap widens. Our first ask would be to consider adding an assistant director position in the office and looking to hire somebody who has field experience and can do that training. And that would be our ask for
2027.
2027, to bring somebody on board and work with the people who are licensed but don't have the field experience necessary to do that work. So that's the long and the short of it. There's a lot of technical things. There's a process we would have to walk through. Eventually, what it would mean is we would ask you to consider a resolution establishing true county assessing and consider adding the position for 2027.
A letter did go out to all the townships too, just kind of explaining the why behind it. And so I do know that, I think Jeff brought that to the Township Association meeting in May. And I haven't personally heard anything from those conversations, but I think there have been some comments on it. But I think the biggest thing is that this isn't us trying to take anything away from the townships. It's trying to make it easier for them, because I did have one local that retired this year, and I had 3 districts that were struggling to try to find somebody. I believe 2 of them have found somebody, and the 3rd one, they were not sure what they were gonna do. So I think they met last night and they were gonna talk to me today. So it is a future problem, but it also, I didn't realize this person was retiring as early as they did. So I got notified about 3 weeks before the July 1 deadline, that they did not have a local assessor, so.
So Tom and I met, because we're on the personnel committee with this, and if I could just add, one is, even if we approve this position, Maria explained that it's not easily filled because of the qualifications. Secondly, because we're required by the state, if we don't have enough people, the state will send somebody and bill us. And then discussion was whether we would continue, whether the county would charge the township, so whatever the township contract is, as that ends with the local assessor, whether we would have the township pay the county for that, or if the county would just absorb the cost. So just, that was part of our discussion.
And I think the sum of the contracts held by the taxing entities is roughly $450,000. That would offset about 2/3 of the long-term anticipated cost of staff to provide the service. And counties are pretty much split, depending on how long ago they enacted this, whether they're still charging for it, or whether they're just incorporating that cost in the county levy and not passing it on to townships. Initially, to reduce the impact on the county budget, we'd probably have to continue to charge the townships for that, and figure out what, right now, each of the townships has a contract, so the price per parcel that they're paying for that service is different from one township to the other. So there would be some amount of equalizing that over time. And probably essentially in the long run, consider eliminating that, just because that's part of what our responsibility is, but that would be a longer term goal. And it would happen as we have to add staff to take that on. So initially, what I will tell you is that the request in 2027 is unfunded. We wouldn't have enough contracts to cover the cost of that additional position that's requested. So I know it's a hard ask this year, but it's a conversation that we have to start now, because in 2028, when we know that one of our major locals is not planning on reapplying for licensure, we're gonna have a gap then, and if we don't act in the next 3 months, we won't be prepared to take action in 2028.
Could you explain to the board the process a person on your staff has to go through to become certified to do this?
Sure,
And
so.
the timeline?
Sure, so there's 2 different licensing levels that are required to be able to be like an independent on your own, technically, I think 3. So to get a certified Minnesota assessor's license or a CMA license, you have to have 12 months of experience, and there's 4 32-hour classes that you have to take with tests that you have to pass to get that. The next step then is to become income qualified, so that you can do any income producing properties or commercial properties. That is an additional 2-week courses of lots of math intensive things. And then the next license that the state has required is kind of as the minimum license is your accredited Minnesota assessor license or your AMA. That is 3 years of experience at a minimum. You have to do a form report, which is like basically writing an appraisal. I think when we did ours, it was like 100 and some page document, like it takes a long time to do it. Plus you have to do an 8-hour residential case study test. Like it takes a lot to get your license. There is one step further than that if you want to get your senior accredited, which is a SAMA license. And that's 5 years of experience. So this isn't something that, I do have people in the office that have the required licensing or are working towards it, but what we're lacking is that field experience. And so we need someone that has that experience to teach our people. Like we've been out in the field, but I was never trained to be out in the field either. It's just because we've worked here long enough that we've worked with the locals. We know some of that stuff. Where we need someone that can help us look at our manuals and be like, okay, this is out of date, or we need to look at this, or how about fixing this, or, and then training our people how to do it. But this isn't something we can promote from within, and it's gonna be something where we're gonna have to have it where we are pulling somebody from another county, so it needs to be attractive enough that they're going to leave where they currently are. But it's a 3 to 5 years, 3 years at a minimum, and that it probably takes a little bit longer than that for most people.
So I've got a couple things. Just to be clear, if a township or city is happy with their assessor, they can continue to contract with that person, but in a sense, eventually that contract will be held with the county, but the township or city would still be able to pick their assessors.
Yes and no. So the township would not be able to pick who does the assessing. So the contract would be between like Schoolcraft Township and Hubbard County. Technically though, what I would say is, so they don't have a say in who is their local. However, if we currently have locals, and I have several very, very good locals that they do a good job, they really care about their townships, my goal would not be to take those contracts away from them. My goal isn't to take any contracts away from anybody. So they don't get to pick who their local is, but if, like say Schoolcraft local has been doing it forever, if he wanted to continue on, then we would just have a separate contract between Hubbard County and that local assessor to do that district.
And then the current local assessors, I know there's, like you say, there's 1 or 2 or 3 maybe that are retiring. So if the current local assessors that are still working want to expand, would they have that capability to do that?
They would probably have that option, and I would say until we get our staff up and going, that probably, if I can find someone to take it, that is like the best case scenario for right now, because then we wouldn't have to hire more people right away, different things like that. But I have 3 people that do this full-time right now, and one of them is retiring, and so he is going to be done in 2028. He's not doing his license. The other 2 main ones with the openings that we just had, they're not interested in taking on more work. They can't. They have more than a full-time
Okay.
responsibility, so.
And then, but you, and maybe you or Lauren there, do you guys have enough experience so that if there is a gap in your free time, you can do that kind of stuff?
I like that in our free time. Yes, I do think.
I wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. In our downtime, I do think that, obviously, if we're like, hey, we can't find anybody and we're not ready, we have to get it done because it's ultimately our responsibility. So yes, we have enough, I think. We have enough experience probably, we just don't have enough time maybe, but we would figure it out.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
My big questions are, if the townships are having a hard time finding contracts, what makes us think we're gonna be any more successful?
Because we can train people.
All right, and then the problem with that is, as we transition from contracted assessors doing the work to staff people doing the work, our costs are gonna go up because we pay benefits. And those aren't, they may or may not be built in the contract depending how many contracts that assessor has. So we're talking over time, a significant levy increase. And at some point in time, it's going to be hard for the county to continue to charge the townships if they're not contracts. If they're staff people doing the work, the townships would have no obligation to pay us for that at that point.
There are still counties who charge for the service on a parcel basis. So there, like I said, I think If we took the amount that's being paid in contracts and we equalized it over the number of parcels that we have, we could still fund 2/3 of the cost of the additional staff down on that end. On the front end, with the initial person, we don't have enough revenues coming in to offset that. But the transition, the likely transition from independent local assessors to staff assessors would be relatively funded as it happened, unless the board were to make a decision to say that we were gonna phase that out and we're gonna pay for that. Now, right now, if you were to think about townships who are have a $30,000 or $35,000 a year contract in their current budget, if we told them that we weren't gonna charge them that, are they gonna reduce their budget by $35,000?
No.
So
Oh, sure they are.
They might maintain the same thing.
I've never been a township supervisor, so I don't know what I would do, but
I wouldn't if I was, and the problem is that there again, what we've been complaining about for the last 3 years is unfunded mandates coming from the state. And we're gonna create one of our own if we do this. We're going to take on the burden that's currently being taken care of by townships. And the townships won't lower the levy. I wouldn't lower the levy. They'd probably just keep it at the same level they've been at. So, you know, I'd be in favor of figuring out some way where we could still capture the money the townships are spending on this, at least in the short term, for a while. Otherwise, we're gonna put ourselves in a pickle and the taxpayers not getting any benefit, then they're actually paying more.
I think in the short term though, like I said, I know of one local assessor that is for sure not redoing their license. So you're gonna have 6 or 7 districts that we might have to try to figure out what we're doing. But the majority of it, nothing is going to change for the other locals. Do you know what I mean? Except for we hold the contract versus they have the contract with Rockwood or whatever. And so that cost is there. The other thing too is, like I said, I have 7 local assessors that are doing it. Our plan, even future, like when we look at the org chart in like best case scenario, here's what we would need. We're not looking at adding an additional 5 people to make it 7. Like that's not a, so there is going to be fewer people that it's not gonna be a 1-for-1 ad, I guess
That's
we'll say
likely
it that
where
way.
it'll end up.
I don't think,
It may take a while, but that's just generally government creep. That's the way it's gonna end up. And that's my concern. I get the problem, and we really don't have a lot of options
Options.
on the table. I get that. I'm just trying to figure out how are we gonna fund a full FTE here in the short term when we don't have any money?
yeah,
We're already at just with the things that are coming down on us, we're already looking at a preliminary 7% levy increase.
yeah.
And there's more and more coming. And we still don't know the ramifications coming out of St. Paul yet totally. And it even gets worse in 2028.
Yeah, I think this is something that has been talked about ever since I started working in the office and when Lauren got hired. Like, this is ultimately, I think, where it's going to go. It's too bad that we didn't have like a time machine and we could go back a few years and start the process sooner, because then, you know, you're not doing it in some of these times. But, like you said, we don't have a ton of options.
Well, a couple township folks here. You got a question?
Yeah, guess I have some conflicting information here. We were told at the last Township Association meeting in Straight River Township that there's going to be up to 8 assessors retiring by 2028. But I talked to an assessor, Dave Johnson, and
Yep.
he said he told me what he knows is he's the only one retired. So I'm getting some conflicting information here. How many people are you actually losing? My other concern is if the county eventually takes over, some townships out there don't have a strong budget in the first place. And if you start taxing them or having them to pay for an assessor over and above what they're paying their assessor now,
That wouldn't be Steve, the whole point of that would be, so say you contract with Mr. Johnson, and he is the one that I know that as of January, or July 1 of 2028, he is not redoing his license, okay?
right?
So he is the one that I know that is the immediate, but he's also one of my full-time assessors, so he does 5 or 6 districts. So the plan would be is that everyone currently right now has current contracts. So if your contract says with Rockwood that you're gonna pay David Johnson $20 per parcel to do the assessment, the contract with us isn't going to say, well, we're gonna charge you $42. It would be whatever that local is costing. So the county's not going to make money on it. So if we did this, then my contract would be, it would say Hubbard County to Rockwood Township, and we are gonna pay $20 a parcel. Then I would turn around and I would contract out with the new local assessors. So whether David Johnson in Hubbard County, and their payment is $20 a parcel. So it's not, this isn't going to be above and beyond what you guys are already, every township is already paying for an assessing contract. It's already in everyone's budgets. So the point would be not to put more burden on you guys, it's basically a wash, like, depending on, eventually you might have to localize or equalize them a little bit, because there is a vast difference between what contracts are paying for local assessing. I have some that are $10 and I have some that are $28 a parcel, that's a big difference, so.
Well, right now I know how David does, he says most accessories do it, they just charge a flat rate.
Yep, he
And
does a
then
lot of words,
Per, I
yep,
think they do what, 1/4 of the township every 4 years, and so on. Buy it, and then you multiply that by the number of parcels in
yep.
that area, and that's how he gets his charge.
Yeah, that's how him and one other local do it. I have other ones. I think David, like, he started with a per parcel, or it used to be a per record.
It used to be per parcel, yeah.
Correct. And so some people are just going to a flat, like, I'm gonna charge you $7,200 for the thing, and, you know, I'll do half up now and half in July, or whatever it is. So however the language is in your contract, the point would be to mirror that until we get to a point where if Hubbard County is doing all of the assessing and we have no locals, then we would probably want to try to equalize the language so that we have one contract for everybody. But that's, you're talking many years down the road, we're not anywhere near that.
So then I only have one other question. So let's say David retires, well, he is going to.
Yep.
He's not gonna renew his license after next year.
Correct.
If we find someone else to fill his position, can we hire that person
So if this,
going forward?
if this went true county, like we're talking, you wouldn't be able to hire them, but if you had somebody that you would want to do the work, then it would be a conversation where we could possibly look at contracting with that new person. So you actually can't say, yes, this is who we wanna hire, but there are talks, if you're like, hey, we found this person, they have all this experience, you should talk to them. That's always a conversation we can have.
Because I can't remember which township it was at our township association meeting, but they said we have an assessor that's even looking for more townships to assess. So we could approach that person, say, once Davis is over with, we would like to hire you, then you're telling us we can't go ahead and hire someone going forward?
If this goes.
You could, but the contract would be between the county and the local.
Between him and the county.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. So if you do have a local assessor that's looking for more work, then you should let me know who it is, because I've called 6 of the 7 locals, and everyone's like, we're full, we can't take on any more work. So if we do have somebody that's looking for more work, that would be great.
I'd have to find out, try to remember who the person was that spoke up. And actually, one township said that they've actually hired someone from Cass County to do their assessing now for their township. And I'm not sure which one it was, but the other one said, yeah, they're looking for their assessor's looking for another 3 to 4 townships they'd like to
Okay.
start assessing too, so.
And our goal would be to continue to use locals who are capable, licensed, and doing good work.
Yep.
We came to you last year and said that we're gonna have to charge back a couple of townships to fill in the blanks where some of the locals didn't do good work, and that ended up resulting in additional charges to the townships. So, that, and I will the letter that I sent out in May said we're aware that one or more of these independent contractors will not be renewing their license in 2028. We know it's one. We also know another one retired without much notice this year.
Correct. That one, I had no idea that he was I figured he would maybe be done in 2028.
And the county staff will have to hire staff over time to have the capacity to serve those parcels not under contract. So our intention is not to put any of the contractors out of business. It's to have them do the work as long as they want to do the work, but for us to have the capacity to pick that up when they're done. Like I said, the two pieces are to enact the ordinance or enact the resolution that sets that in motion. And that's independent of, but related to the ask to say, we need an assistant director in the department who has the experience to be able to train our staff or new staff to become licensed and qualified to do that field work. The first one doesn't have any budgetary implications. The second one does, and as far as I can see into the crystal ball, it's that position that's not funded by the current fees being collected for that process. Over time, as contracts would run out and become done by local staff, then that contract money would be assigned to that function. So it's not a $450,000 gap. We gotta hire 5 people and add $450,000 to the levy. But the ask is to consider, and whether it's January 2027 or later in 2027 or deferred, we can kind of work through that. But Lauren and Maria do not have, and that basically takes the organization chart that we have, that 1 person, 2 person, and then the rest of the staff. It kind of splits it 1 person, 2 people, makes 2 legs of staff. So those that are doing the internal services and the function of the recorder's office, and those that are doing the field work. I didn't really prepare, we have that, but I didn't really prepare it for today because it's kind of a general conversation. So that is the request that you'll likely see in the first iteration of the budget, is what it would cost with that additional person in there. So you'll be able to see that in context. And then the other conversation about whether the board is at the point of considering the resolution to go True County that's the discussion for you all to have today, I think.
So Dave, I can appreciate, I actually agree with what you're saying, but the problem is, this has to be done. And so, I don't know if any of you were on the board, I don't remember, when we had the audit disaster. And we knew it was coming, and the board just kind of lagged behind, and we got stuck with the state to do our audit. We're still with the state to do our audit. I'm not interested in the state doing anything, actually. So I'm really opposed to have the state come in and do this position. And chances are, if the state does come in, it's gonna cost us more.
Right.
And you're right, it's a non-funded mandate.
So how do we protect the county budget against a scenario where the townships all of a sudden do find a contract assessor and want it to keep, and in the meantime, we've hired an FTE and we don't need it? Because if the townships all find another contractor for the ones who are retiring, why did we need the FTE in the first place? That's what I'm worried about. Because the preferred method is for the townships to continue to contract and find it. And I get there's a time frame in there where you don't have enough time to react if they don't find somebody, but should we not maybe try and have the townships be a little proactive to see if they can find a contracted replacement before we make the decision?
That's exactly the question as it relates to budget. The gamble is the length of time it takes for someone to get the experience, to get the licensure,
Drop dead date, yeah.
versus what our anticipation, we know one person's not gonna relicense after 2028. That person has multiple township that they hold contracts with. The person that retired this year was a surprise to us. I have had other township officials reach out to me to say, we didn't even know this was a problem, or we knew this was a problem and we didn't know what to do with it. So there are township officials who are very glad that we're having this conversation. And again, I'll reiterate that the consideration of the resolution to enact True County is independent from the decision to hire the staff person. And you will have an opportunity, I will include that in the preliminary budget, we'll have an opportunity to take a look at that and see what that looks like in the context of the rest of the budget, and make decisions on that between August and December. The biggest challenge is for us to have the capacity to provide the services in 2028 and beyond I don't see an I don't see an alternative to electing True County. And as we've said, if the township wants to look for somebody and find somebody, perfectly fine. But if they bring us somebody who another county says they don't do very good work, and we've had to bill that township to do the work that they were supposed to have done, we would probably say, we're not gonna recommend that contract. If they bring in somebody that we've had good results with, or has credentials to say that they've done good work in other situations, be happy to pay that contract. The additional cost that we have is the benefits that we pay. The reason that we believe we can fill these positions when these independent contractors are retiring is because we pay those benefits. So the catch-22 is run all the way through that. And like I said, just for today's conversation, we really have to think of them as two independent but related things. And the budget conversation we'll have August through November as we make that determination. And the challenge is if one other person retires unexpectedly, it's really gonna create a gap. If it follows the schedule we think it's gonna follow, we have time to make that happen. Even at that point in time, even if we didn't hire somebody until 2028 and that person had to do 7 townships, taxing authorities, they would have the capacity to do that. They would have less time to train new staff for the next round that we have to take over, but the gap between when we don't have capacity to do that work in-house it's an unknown, right? If we don't hire someone in 2027 and we push it off till 2028, we're probably all right because of what we know we have in hand with contracts. And that, given the situation we're in, the position that we have, the numbers I'm gonna share with the General Government Committee today, for that not to move north of that 6 to 7% just to cover our existing costs and the inflationary costs in 2027, means we really can't add positions this year. And as far as I know, I'm gonna bring requests for 2 positions in 2027, and I'm gonna argue for them, and I'm gonna recognize the fact that there's a solid argument against it, which is just lack of funds.
So just a quick perspective, because I was on the other side of the table here, and one of the concerns, this was brought up quite a while back, and I remember most of the townships, I believe, were against going this route. And one of the reasons I know in Henrietta Township we're against it is because we've always had pretty good assessors in our township, so we were completely happy. And we were worried that if the county all of a sudden was contracting with assessors and had 10 different contracts with assessors, okay, some are gonna be better than others, which one were we gonna get? That was our concern. We'd rather have been in control of choosing our own assessor, but you alleviate some of that if you say continuing to work with existing contracts would help. And I guess probably most townships probably wouldn't have an issue whether they contact directly with the assessor or contract with the county, as long as they can use the same assessor if they like them, as long as they're around.
And
Yeah, on the flip side of that, so the one township that we do hold a contract with, we've held that, I believe this is we've already gone through one whole quintile, so I can't remember what year we took it on, but it's been probably 6+ years.
Yeah, it's been
It's
probably at least 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
Nevis Township, I'm Tom Walsh from Nevis Township. We went through this years ago. Our assessor decided to retire, she was qualified. She didn't want to go back to more schooling because of our valuation. So we could not find an assessor that would fit our situation for evaluation of our township. So we came to the county and they hired, and so we pay the company, I think this year was our half payment, 17,000.
Yeah, 17 is the first one that's due.
We paid, on the average, we paid 35,000. It's not a whole lot more than what we were paying before. But on the cost, I think if the county's looking at, the townships are already assessing to pay for their assessor. So if the county has people, and if the prices say approximately the same, it's not gonna cost the township any more money. The county could say, well, here's what you're paying, this is what we're gonna need to collect from you. But everybody's gonna want a pay raise sooner or later, and,
Yeah.
but Nevis went through this years ago, and we have a contract with the county, and it works well for us.
And the thing, what I remember, what prompted that was, he is correct, one of his locals retired. They hired, an assessor that they thought would do a good job. I'm trying to say this nicely. They hired someone who they thought would do a really good job. They wound up not getting their job done. We had to take over. And so the township had already paid this local assessor a certain amount of money. They got a bill from us because we had to go out and do the field work and do the data entry, and we had to do all of this work, and it was as of February 1, so we were rushing to get it done. So the township was like, well, we don't like the unexpected payment, and so if we contract with the county, whether, if I'm late or not, like, I can't charge you more money because I didn't fulfill my end of the contract. So there is some safety there a little bit, where if you do get someone that's not, and every year it seems like my locals get later and later in turning their stuff in. This last year, we had a little bit of a time crunch, and so I do think that us holding those contracts and being able to set maybe some different dates and actually be the enforcer of some of that will help some of that. But that was kind of the main reason for Nevis going to it, was they're like, well, it's up to you now to make sure it gets done, and as long as it gets done well. And so I think, but we had someone in mind that was willing to contract with us, and it's worked out great. We're just literally the middle person that, you know.
So my curiosity then asked me, you know, how were we able to be successful to find somebody when they weren't?
I honestly think what happened was there was other people willing. They didn't like the surprise cost, and by contracting with us, that eliminates
Correct.
the risk to them, because if the person we contract with doesn't get the job done, we have to step in and cannot charge them anymore.
Correct.
So I think does that make sense?
Yeah, the situation was, he did not complete his contract, so.
Correct.
We just withheld his last payment, and we paid the county. But, you gotta make sure your contract written with the assessor.
Right.
So, let me get this straight, because of that little scenario that happened to you, was it more that you weren't interested in going down potentially that same road versus not being able to find somebody to contract
Yeah,
with?
it was tough to find somebody that was qualified. But, you know, we contacted different assessors, and some didn't wanna take on any more work. And then, like I said, apparently the state requires certain requirements from an assessor when there's
Yeah.
a certain valuation in a township.
Yep.
Or properties or whatever. And that's what we ran into. It had to be they had to be correctly qualified to do the assessing.
So
Yeah.
what I'm trying to get at here is the supply and demand issue here. Are there really are there really a lack of contractors out there to do the work when we were successful finding somebody when they weren't? So that's my question, because it comes back to that FTE position. If we can find contractors and go along and go through county and just find contractors and just change how the contracting works together, no problem.
So like Henrietta was lucky that they had someone that already had the licensing, works in an assessing office, that's like, I will do this part-time. That's not typical.
Okay.
And so because you have to have years of experience to be able to get your license, well, if you're doing a local and you're like, I'm just gonna take the classes on my own to become a local, which when I went through classes, there were a lot of people, because they're like, there's jobs, we can find them, we can do it. But more and more people aren't doing that because it's in-house now. So like, you're getting hired on by the county, or you're actually working in an office. And so it's really tough to get that 12 months of experience to get your first license when there aren't a ton of jobs out there for locals. Like I said, most counties have at least one or two locals. But whenever you go to class or you talk about it, and you're like, we have all local assessors, and they're just mind blown, because that's not normal. Like, it's not, I shouldn't say normal, no one else does it. And we have been lucky up until maybe, we've had very good locals for several years, but they're getting to the point now where they're like, I'm not sure we want to do this full-time anymore. And that's where we're gonna run into a problem, because we don't have the staff ready to be like, hey, no big deal if you retire, you can take it over. We're not there. And so, because we haven't had to be.
Yeah.
And we would always, we wouldn't randomly assign locals to different jurisdictions. We would want locals working with the same books they've been working with all along, because it's much more convenient and easy, and it's just, you would have continuity as long as you could have continuity. But in the end, because we're responsible for it, it would be of value for us to know that we have the capacity to take that on when we get to that point. And like I said, the position that we're asking for, I'm still gonna put it in the 27 budget. We'll review it with other requests. And if we determine that we think we can get by without that until late in 27 or 28 or even later, then that's a decision that we make from a budgetary perspective. But from the first perspective of, and the first thing, if we decide to put the resolution establishing True County on on an upcoming board meeting, the first thing that I'm gonna put in the letter to township officials and other taxing officials is gonna be that when you have a contract with the county, we can't come back for more, right? If the person that we've contracted with doesn't meet the requirements, we're gonna have to pick it up. We can't come back and charge you for more again. That's the biggest protection in that situation that Nevis has found, is that if we have a contract for X number of dollars, we're responsible for delivering that product for X number of dollars. They can't exceed that amount.
And it does happen. I had 2 districts, like Jeff said, I had 2 districts this year that was like, we're gonna have to step in and finish it because they're not done. And I had someone step up that said, I'll help you out, and they did not charge us for it. So we got lucky. And so it is a thing. So not all my locals are doing a great job. So I think that's part of my problem too, where if you are looking for more work, there's maybe like, why are you looking for more work? Or, if you work in multiple counties, I guess, it is hard to work in different systems. So I have heard some of that some people might give up certain counties to come to work for other counties. I have other locals that are like, hey, I'd love to take on that jurisdiction, but then I'm gonna drop this one, and I'm like, that actually doesn't help me. Like, tradesing doesn't help me. So,
The other thing I'm afraid of, because if I was on the township end of the perspective and we did this, I wouldn't be too interested in doing the work of finding a contractor and stuff, because the responsibility is now on the county. I just tell the county to have at it. And I'd get that added benefit of that protection that Tom talks about, so.
and I think there's maybe nothing wrong with that though, because like, I'm
Well,
going
except
to,
that the burden,
is
the
off.
cost burden comes more and more on us over time.
Sure. I do think, like, obviously, when I have people that are doing good work, it makes our job at the county level way easier. So there is a high expectation and a standard there that it's not going to be like, well, you're wearing blue today, you can go out in the field. Like, that's not the purpose of it, so, but yeah.
Yeah. I know, Theora, you raised your hand there a while ago. You had a question?
My suggestion is that, thank you for taking my hand. My suggestion is that we train one of the locals to be the person that you're talking about. The way I read the report was that you're going to train someone from inside to be an assessor and train the other people. I have Darren Katzenmeyer, who's wonderful, and he spent all his own money to take all this training. It's really difficult. And so I would recommend someone like that, haven't talked to him if he's even interested, but someone like him to be the trainer for the new people in the county. Instead of taking somebody that's just working in the county right now and says, oh, okay, I'll do that, and then you pay for their training. That's the way I read this, and I'm not sure I.
Yeah, so the person, the position that we're looking for would have to have the licensing already and the field experience. So we're looking for like a Darren that's willing to come and work for the county full-time. So we are looking for that experience. Most of the locals, like if you ask them, hey, can we come out and shadow you for a day, they're fine with it. But when you bring us out in the field with them, we slow them down because we ask a lot of questions, and which is great. But if you do that every day, it's going to take them twice as long to do their work too. So, and they're going to, for training wise, they would want to be compensated somehow, but most of them don't have the time to train people like that. But yes, we are looking for the Darren that wants to come and work for us.
Okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
absolutely.
So I've got a couple questions now. through the conversation here.
Yeah.
So, say, we have a few districts that are deficient and they don't get the work done. And if the state had to step in, are they gonna step in and take over the whole thing, or just those that don't get done?
So typically, it's not the state that would step in, it would be us that would have to step in and get it done. And then, when the state steps in, as if we didn't get our stuff done where I wasn't making ratios that were compliant, then the state would come in and basically says, you have to raise everything 20% or whatever. So typically, it's going to be us that has to step in and find somebody,
And
or to do it.
Do we know what the cost to the state would be if they did it compared to us paying for it?
So if you look at the history of state board
Thinking about-
orders.
Thinking about full-time, you know, the benefits and everything that we have to pay.
Yeah. The state board orders would cost local taxpayers significantly more. Remember, we have to equalize from between 90 to 105% of the tested values, right? If the state issues board orders, they come in at 105 to 110.
And it's just a flat, so if it's Long Lake is low, they're gonna say all on water properties in Henrietta need to go up 20%, so.
It doesn't cost us anything, but it raises the local values kind of substantially. We have a tendency to try to equalize somewhere around that 95-ish%. That gives us enough margin that we haven't had board orders in ever. And the counties that do, when I was in Cook County, I had a commissioner and I had staff who said, we disagree with this, we're not gonna do it. And you can defy the state all you want, but when the board order comes down, that's what you tax them at. And if they were trying to make a Custer's last stand on some valuations, and there was no appeal, they just lost. And it's not the way to do the work. Truth be told, if we allow that to happen and we don't hire the staff, our budget levy looks better. Because the cost goes straight through to those property owners. But it's not doing the job that we're supposed to be doing for those property owners and representing them equally along
Yeah,
all the other properties in the
From a fair and equitable
county.
standpoint, it's not good.
Again, remember, people's thought is, when my value goes up by 15%, you're collecting 15% more taxes from me. We're not. We're collecting the amount of the tax levy that the board certifies, spread over the value of the $75 million worth of tax capacity in the county, right? So if your value and the tax capacity of your property goes up more than the properties around you, then your taxes are gonna go up. If it goes up the same as the properties around you, your taxes are gonna be the same relative to all those other properties. And the goal of this is to have those equalized and to have the smallest coefficient of dispersion possible, so that when people look to one home to another and look at comparables, that they look relatively the same. There are always outliers, but I think you've seen in the last couple of 3 years, as we've had our County Board of Appeal, there's fewer outliers because we see cases of fewer things like, was it 22 or 23 when there was an error in the system that caused Payinsky Lake to be completely out of whack? Well, that's been resolved. And situations like that aren't coming up again. But one way or another, to avoid the staff that we have that are responsible on the back end for setting those ratios, is to make sure that we have good information coming in from the appraisers. And whether we have enough supply of local appraisers that are willing to work on a contract basis or not is just a matter of time. And the reason we're gonna be able to hire those people is we offer, the security of job, pension, benefits that the locals are not having at that point in time. And over time, we'd be able to fill those positions. But really, out of that, like I said, that $450,000 of money that's coming in, I think the only unfunded portion is the first person that we need that has the experience that can train our existing staff or new staff as needed in the future. And whether we make that decision in 27 or push it down isn't gonna change anything. The ability to work on behalf of the townships and manage the appraisal process throughout is gonna be useful. If somebody's got a good contract, perfect, we just take it over and we sign on it and they sign under it, right? But the contract has to be then with the county. And if somebody has a gap, then we look to the locals that we're already working with and say, you know, for the next year, we've got these 3 that we don't have covered. Are you willing or capable to cover those? I think that they would probably have more capacity when they have the support of the county staff working on the other side of it than they currently do. I don't know how long it would take to the point, and maybe we never get to the point, as Maria has said, there, a lot of counties still use locals for some of their jurisdictions. There just isn't any county that's using them for 31 of 32 jurisdictions like we are. We've been lucky to this point. But like I said, the retirement a month ago kind of caught everybody off guard. And if somebody's an independent contractor and says, I don't want to do this next year, you can't say you have to. So.
To Theora's point a little bit too, because, you know, I'm not so sure of the immediate need for an FTE now. I see where down the line it's gonna probably be necessary, but is there a way that we could either contract with a local or with a consultant to help start training some of our existing staff, rather than assume we don't wanna hire an FTE till 2028? That doesn't say we couldn't, for a certain amount of money that's a lot less than hiring an FTE in 2027, start training our staff. And some of those skill sets they're gonna need, instead of just sitting, doing nothing.
I think you're
It's-
gonna have a hard time
it's-
finding somebody that has the time to, like Darren, he works full-time in assessing, so if we were saying you have to train somebody Monday through Friday, no nights and weekends, it really puts a damper on when he can do his assessing.
I would
Or-
bet there's a consulting firm out there that does this kind of work.
It's a possibility.
Look
And like
into
I
it,
said,
but-
the budget question about, but the first thing, at some point, what we're gonna need is we're gonna need somebody who's qualified, has the experience, and that's their primary position, right? At some point, probably in 2028. And having that person on staff would allow us to, like I said, the people who have the licensure, some of them sitting in this room, but don't have the field work necessary to be confident to be able to do that work, or qualified to be able to do that work. If they're not, they create more work on the other side of the issue for the county. So the question about the budget can be delayed as long as we entertain the question about the structure.
How many counties are using local? Very few now? Is it completely, I mean, totally like we are?
Nope, nobody's
No
doing
one
it the way,
does.
like we are, no.
No one uses all, and I was like, when you said 31, I was like, what? We do all the contract, but we still don't do the work. I have a local that does it, so,
Yeah.
I mean, we're 32 for 32. So I know Becker has a couple, Beltrami has a couple
Yeah.
locals, but they also have some of their, they have a couple weird ones where like some of their staffs are the locals, so they're doing it on nights and weekends for a couple other jurisdictions because they had the contract previously or whatever.
Right.
But for the most part, most people, it's in-house.
Tom, you gotta have something.
Well, my thought process goes to a better way to collect the money rather than property taxes, so I really don't have a whole lot to contribute. Maybe get the money the same way the state does by income and sales tax, but I really don't have a whole lot to contribute, except, maybe we can get the process going as far as having the county, the true appraisal, but just hold off on hiring that person if we can, like you were saying.
This isn't going to be an easy position to fill. So I mean, even if we post it, it's gonna take us a while to find the right person that's gonna come in and do it. And it's gonna take some time for them to get used to how we do assessing too. So, I mean, it's gonna be probably a year-long process at least to get people up and going.
Okay.
My guess is you would end up getting one of the locals, and then the process just goes a little faster, because we just lost a local then.
Yeah, I actually don't, our locals like their freedom of not having to work Monday through Friday. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't, I mean, we've talked to some of them and they have no interest in coming in and being a Monday through Friday position. So they can't go to Costa Rica for 3 months out of the winter if they work for us, so.
And one other question?
Yeah, so, just a recommendation, I mean, if you're talking that the county's eventually gonna take over assessing each township, it would be kinda nice if you guys, I don't know how you do it, but come up with a comparison. First of all, my name is Steve Altman, I'm from Rockwood Township, I'm sorry. Anyway, so, Rockwood Township, we get assessed this much amount of money through David Johnson every single year. Now, this is what Hubbard County is gonna charge you for doing that same assessment. Break it down for each township, so that, and then you could go to those townships and say, here's what it's gonna cost, here's what it's gonna cost. What it's costing now compared to what it's gonna cost. And then give those townships the opportunity. We are going to try and find another assessor to take over our assessing. That's what our plan is for right now. But if the county can come up with a figure that's pretty close to it, maybe we won't go that high. But it would be really nice to have that information, so.
Again, the only negative there is if we use staff to do that, you would be under no obligation to pay us.
Well, no, I mean, you must already have that information through the assessments right now, which you know a township is being charged for that assessor. You just have to come up with what you think it's gonna cost that township going forward. If all of a sudden the county is doing the assessment for every single township, what you're going to be charging each one of those townships, because it's going to be different compared to Davis Township, Akeley Township, Fern Township is.
Yeah, which
their
would be
budget
true
is-
if we were contracting.
Right.
But if we're having our inside staff do the work, you would have no obligation to pay us anything.
It'd still be
But
on a
that's-
contract though.
But that's,
There'd still be a contract.
There's
that's
still
not
would
true.
have-
Most counties still have a contract with the local authorities to pay for the service. And we can easily gather that information and come up with an average. I'm guessing that number is already roughly equalized and averaged over time because of the, just the general competition principles. And I think it would be hard for us to say if the townships are currently paying $450,000 in round numbers, but it's gonna cost us $550 to provide the service, that we're raising everybody's rate by 20%, right? That's, if I could tell you that, and they weren't concerned about it, then we wouldn't be worried about hiring this person up front. But I can't tell you that because they would be concerned about that. So it's, like I said, I think in my mind, the gap is that first person, and when that gap is yet to be determined.
And some townships would be worse than others, depending on what they're paying for their contract right now.
We have most of that information, we can gather that information, that's probably something we should present if we're gonna present the resolution to go true countywide. I'm guessing the range is within, 20% variance from, I haven't looked at it, but.
Our payment didn't change a whole lot from when we had a private contractor to when we contracted with the county. It might have changed a couple $1,000s at the most. So it wasn't a big thing, but it eliminated the process of us trying to find the correct person to do the job. As you said, we thought we had the right person once. You get surprised by a bill from the county and we go, oh.
Yeah, we had lots of conversations on that one. Right.
So irregardless, the board needs to think about a long-term plan that Maria is bringing forth, because at some point, we cannot expect the current staff to put in hours and hours and hours overtime. That's just unreasonable.
And I think.
Again, you're making the assumption that there's no contractors out there to be found.
Yeah, and I'm
And
not
that may-
arguing either way.
That may be true, and that, you know, that may not be true in the short term until they have a chance to look.
But irregardless, we can come up with a plan that includes looking for, but at least instead of saying we're not gonna consider anything, we need to think about it and at least draw something
Oh,
out.
Again, the question of the resolution establishing True County is independent from the
Right.
question of
Yeah.
budgeting for staff. But they are related, and they're related because of the information that we think we have that was made more drastically when somebody retired this year without really any notice, right? Everybody's scrambling to do that. I think,
And the people the 2 townships that have said that they have found somebody, they are unlicensed, they've never taken classes, they just happen to be working underneath someone else's license. So that tells me that there aren't people beating down the door.
we're not even sure that they're capable of executing the contracts.
Correct, but it's ultimately that person whose license they're working under that
Responsibility.
he's the one that's responsible to make sure that these get done. And so, that doesn't tell, like I said, that doesn't say that we have a lot of people that are beating down the door to come work for them, so.
I'm certainly willing to go ahead with the countywide and then debate that position later. Let's get a process going.
So Commissioner Kruger, is there any additional information you need to know what that would look like based on the conversation today, before I would bring that forward? Is it roughly what the costs would be?
Yeah, what each township's paying, what the cost would be for that position, and I noticed you got one line here that ideally we would let backfill at least one of the position of the staff that would go under this new position, what you're asking in that one.
That's not 2027, that would be future.
That'll be in the future, but
And
still.
that's
once we
based
get
on the
contracts.
assumption that some of our staff that are in the licensure queue would decide to move to this new position, to become certified and experienced to be a field appraiser, rather than doing the work that they're doing. And if they did that, we'd have to backfill potentially that spot as well. So that is, I couldn't tell you when that is, but that's not in the 2027 budget conversation.
Did I hear you correctly when you said out of 87 townships, we are the only one that doesn't have this resolution?
100%.
We're not the only one that doesn't have a resolution for True County,
Okay.
but
We're
we are
just-
the only one that's 100% reliant on
Okay.
contracts to do our appraising.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's probably about, I don't know if there's a third of counties that haven't actually authorized the resolution, but they are effectively doing the work as if that was the case, and then hiring contractors to fill in some gaps for them.
Well, there's a good question then, is can we just do this anyhow and not have to have the resolution?
You have to do the resolution.
Yes, we could, but no, it wouldn't be good. And I can do some thinking and give you some bullet points on that. I mean, that's a fair question. Yes, we could do it without establishing that resolution. It's not as clear, and there are some other drawbacks to proceeding that way.
I guess partly I asked that question because I have confidence in our staff. You know, and think about the history.
Yeah.
And you guys have combined departments and all these kinds of things. I just think that we have people that can think outside the box and are doers, and they achieve things. And
The
so I
biggest-
just want to have that as an option too.
Yep, the biggest challenge is not having the clarity of the roles between the county and the taxing jurisdictions. And if we allow some of the jurisdictions to contract directly with people that are potentially not qualified or don't do good work, they're taking a risk that they're not really assessing the cost of. The people that paid extra to have us come in and finish the work last year never believed that was gonna happen. So one of the reasons we would do it would be to protect the townships from that.
That is my only fear of going the True County route, because if I was on the other side of the table in the township, county's gonna contract, good. We just wash my hands from it. Let them take care of the burden of contracting the
The-
assessors if they can find them.
The benefit to us is not having to do the work twice,
Yeah.
and to make sure that field assessing is done on time, which it hasn't been, accurately, which it hasn't always been, so that the balance of the work that we're responsible to the state for can be done on time, and we have confidence in it.
By state statutes and everything, we don't know until February 1 if they got their work done or not.
Yeah.
And so if I have to have my live file out by the end of February and I all of a sudden realize that they have all of this work to do, it definitely puts a pinch. Now you're assessing with 2 feet of snow on the ground, and so it's hard to do a really accurate, good job versus if you knew ahead of time, you could plan your summer and be like, hey, we're gonna get this done, so.
You see where I'm coming from, though? I think once we adopt this, it's gonna be a self-fulfilling thing that's just it's gonna happen.
I don't know if that's a bad thing, though, if the county is
Yeah,
doing a
I'm
good
not saying
job.
it,
I
I'm
don't know.
not saying it is.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
but under the current circumstance, you know, some of that burden is on the township to find the people. It's all gonna become ours.
But the burden is also on the local assessors. If they want to continue to do that work, and that's how they want to continue to make their money, they'll continue to hold contracts with the county for the townships. We're not going to pinch them out unless they determine that they're not doing the work, right? As long as they're continuing to doing the work, we're going to continue to contract as many of those services out as we possibly can, because it does delay and defer costs. And there's no reason to replace a contracted assessor who's doing a good job. We'd rather have them doing that. But things happen. I mean, somebody dies or moves away unexpectedly. If we hold the contract, we're responsible for getting that done on behalf of the township and not the township.
Not every township knows that it's their responsibility either. We had a jurisdiction that opened up for the 2026 assessment. And when I called and spoke to them, they're like, well, who are you gonna pick? And I was like, well, it's like, they had no idea that they had to find somebody. So not all townships are as proactive either. You know, you hear from the same ones, or they're very active with it and they wanna be informed and different things like that. But I believe that there are several that just think that we are the ones that picked their local assessor, so.
The other primary value of electing True County is that, based on that resolution, the jurisdictions have to turn their books over to the county, right? Right now, the books for some of these townships are on somebody's laptop or in somebody's briefcase, and if that source gets destroyed, we don't have them, right? The history and the data relative to all of the parcels has to be turned over to the county, so the county has it, and presumably we're gonna have more safe ways to maintain that, and we do, than if we didn't do that. So from a regulatory standpoint, it makes a big difference. From a procedural and how the work gets done standpoint, it doesn't make a big difference, because we still have a lot of people doing that local work that we have high confidence in. And even though the contract is held between the county and that contractor, the opinion of the township is really important. You know, your contract is up for renewal this year. This person is continuing to want to be, is willing to do it for the next period of time. Okay, we'll sign the contract. The price is going up 3% a year for the next 2 years. Okay, everybody knows what it is. There's no surprises. If there is a surprise, it's because somebody stops doing the work before the end of a contract, before the end of their licensure year, and there's a lot of reasons why that would happen. You know, we just saw one, fortunately, it was 3 jurisdictions where that happened this year. But we have significant concerns about the people that they've picked, because they're not, that's a bad situation. If we pick people who weren't currently licensed, but they were working under this position that we'd hired, who was licensed, who was responsible for overseeing that work and their training, we would have high confidence in that. But in this situation, we're not, because we don't have any control over the person who holds the license that says these people are working for me. There's still a chance that the townships are gonna end up paying for work that doesn't get completed.
So summarizing how we move forward, is it kind of the consensus of the board that you'd like to see more data from the townships and how those costs would change from what they are currently to what it would cost the townships at the county, and cost the county if we do the true county move.
We can put together numbers before we bring as we bring the resolution forward. That's relatively easy.
I have one question about, billing the townships for, say the county contracts somebody out to do the appraisal in the township, and then we bill them for that. Would the township be able to say, wow, it's your responsibility, we're not gonna pay this bill?
I mean, I feel like if you have a contract with somebody, then they're in breach of I mean, you can go down legal road, which isn't
So
all that right, but.
the format.
Is there the billing authority of the county?
Yes, no, the county has authority to bill that. Yeah, whether we hire somebody, whether we subcontract somebody to do the work, or whether we do it. If it is the county policy that, you're gonna bill X number of dollars per parcel.
To the
then-
township?
To the township, then you're gonna bill them for that, whether our in-house staff are doing that or contracted staff are doing that. That's another way that we, so we get the list of what everybody's paying. Over time, I would think that would equalize so that it's a much more common number for everybody. I don't know what those numbers are right now, but I can have them before we bring the resolution to you. I can also do an analysis of the proposed job description 10 years down the road versus now. I can't tell you when that's needed. I can look into the future and say, it would be beneficial for us to have somebody on staff who's capable of doing that in 2027, and I can tell you pretty confidently we can get by without it in 2027. I shouldn't have said that, but I have to tell you what I think is true.
That's where I was gonna land anyhow, Jeff, so.
Yeah, that's it, yeah, I'm figuring that out.
I would also like a list of the counties that have not passed his resolution.
We can get that. We can get that, and we can talk to them and find out that they're working this way anyway. But
The only potential cost increase to the township would be if we end up having a lot of staff doing the work versus contracts, then you've got the benefits on top that could affect the contract rate with the township some. But what is that, 10, 20%? I don't know.
yeah,
The preferred method is to still contract, as long as you can.
we'll contract as long as that resource is available. Yep.
Yep.
I know, Maria, you had mentioned that other counties may do things differently as far as assessing. It's all supposed to be one big system that everybody is trained on, so why would every county do their assessing in a different fashion?
I think it's
So that
just,
would be a conflict for somebody or hard for someone to come from, say, Becker and come here to assess.
it's just learning the new system. So as far as like the state's rules and like your median ratios and the sales ratios, all of that is set. So if I go to here in Anoka County, whatever, like I know what the rules they're playing by. But every county, there's no Minnesota CAMA system. So like we have Tyler, Becker has Vanguard, Beltrami has Tyler, but their tables might be different. So it is Tyler to Tyler, but like how we value things versus how they value things could be slightly different. So it's because everyone has their own unique system. So it's a matter of how do we do it and then going from there. But like how you value a house, like if you look at it as someone's like, well, yes, this is how I would grade a house, then it's getting our grading tools and worksheets to match kind of what they're thinking. So
There's also
There
a
is a
significant difference in complexity. Monoman County has 3 recreational lakes in the county. How many neighborhoods do we have?
too many.
400?
I-
Almost one for every major recreational lake in the county?
Yeah.
So that level of detail and distinction is also something that varies from county to county. Now, we're very similar to Cass and Becker, but we're dissimilar from Wadena and Clearwater and Monoman because they just don't have that complexity.
That's where we have like, so our staffing and current people, like they know the system, so they can help with that side of it. And if you can find someone that's like, here's the boots on the ground and how you do it this way, they'll pair well together, so.
Just a reminder that Minnesota has the most complex
Mhm.
tax. And so legislatively, if they would actually change something, however,
Every time they do, they make it
They make it worse.
better.
They have They have the most
We're gonna make
complicated
it
tax
simpler,
system.
and it's never simpler, but that's okay, they tried, so.
It's the most complicated tax system that produces almost zero results at this point in time. In the early 1970s,
That
the
doesn't make you depressed about your job,
the
it's fine.
stratification was significant. And over the last 50 years, you know, even, what year was it? 1999, when they implemented the state general sales tax and changed how they were taxing seasonal properties in the state of Minnesota. In early 70s, seasonal properties paid 4 times the tax rate as a residential property, because there was an intention of giving a break to the people who lived and owned and lived in a home. And there was an intention to provide extra tax for people who had more than one home.
Second home.
Since the last 10 years, people who own a second home actually pay a lower marginal rate on their second home than they do on the first home. So the value of homesteading has almost completely been eliminated through tax structure changes. So it's as complicated as it is, and it produces it doesn't produce the effect of incenting homeowners in that sense. It's kind of ridiculous at this point. We could go to a single tier for residential and not miss anything, but we maintain multiple tiers of residential, and it doesn't create a difference in what the taxes are that are owed.
That is for a different conversation, Jeff.
I know that's a different conversation.
And one that we actually have no power over.
Absolutely, but you made me feel really good about what I do.
I keep saying it because every time I say it in front of a group of my peers, they don't either know or remember that that's the case. So even our policy analysts are like, is that true? And I'm like, yes, it's true. So we will bring this forward, but I think I have an idea of what you're looking for in additional background information before we bring the resolution forward. Still gonna put it on the 2027 budget, and we'll debate that when we have the conversation with them about their department level budget.
All right, anything else? Thank you, Marianne.
Awesome, thanks, guys.
Anybody need a break? Take a quick 5-minute break? 5-minute break. Just know how government creeps, that once it goes further up the chain, it just gets more bureaucratic.
Yeah,
But there's pros to doing it too.
there is.
Township registry. Good, go ahead, great. At this point, if you're gonna do it.
And
then
I'm
let's wash our hands
wondering,
of it.
I'm wondering, do some counties bill the townships on an annual basis for assessing with all the contracts that's going on?
You could, yeah,
You
you
know,
could do
bill
that.
each township based upon their parcel numbers.
Right.
Okay, we're gonna bill you $15 per parcel.
And that's
That's the way it's gonna be. And every township still pays in.
But it will be 20% more expensive that way for doing this.
Yes, yeah, I'm not, no, I wouldn't argue against that one, but yeah.
That's the only.
Oh, yeah.
And how much is it? It might only be $30,000 to $50,000.
Yeah, I would like to see examples of how other counties are doing it
I'm sure it's
with townships, so,
He said they're 150.
yeah,
If it went up, it'll eventually end up that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Dave. How are you? Good, good. Having a good summer?
But she was asking the percent increase. Yeah, for sure. Or maybe you asked that too, like, how did they come up with 36% more when you don't have to do anything, you know?
It's, you ought not to have used percentages, especially without saying what numbers
Right.
he was using to reach those percentages, so.
Yeah, it just, I don't know, like we talked about, it's,
I got just over 16K shaved off just by pushing back a little bit, so.
yeah, and well, like if you guys, like you said, have some money set aside for your portion of it. And you know, like I said, it's, our work's fine, you know, if you guys wanna start and go with it, that's fine, and we don't need to be involved right now. We have something that works and works for our needs and.
next week.
All right, Eric, permitting software.
Yes, this is a continuation of that conversation that we had last month at the June work session. And we've received a proposal from Intuitive Municipal Solutions, which is the permitting software vendor that we've found to have the product that provides as many of the things that we need as we can relative to cost being a consideration. I have a updated proposal from them that refined the scope to more accurately reflect what we were requesting, and I've got copies of that I can pass around. It led to a reduction in cost. When I factor in the implementation fee, the license fee, and the first year maintenance costs, I got $16,300 knocked off from what the number is that was attached in the work session packet. But the background is what prompted this is my department has a Microsoft Access-based database for our permitting software. It's offline, it doesn't accept online payments, it doesn't have the things that the public is expecting these days for being able to interact with us. It's going on 25 or more years of age. The vendor that created it for us doesn't have staff anymore that can support it, so we're a Microsoft update away or a deprecation of support for Access or something just breaking in the system and having that no longer function for us. So in 2022, we had decided to go with a vendor that offered an online permitting software solution that we thought was going to work. We're now approaching almost 4 years into the implementation of that product, and it is not yet live, and it's not close to the point of being able to be live. So that led to us throwing the net again, so to speak, to look at other software products, and IMS was the one that stood out after we did some additional demos on top of the ones that I'd done in prior years. in talking with Jeff, and Jeff can certainly add anything that he'd like to relative to our expanding the scope beyond just my department, trying to provide a one-stop solution for multiple departments for the ease of the public to be able to access a location where they can apply for whatever it is they need. So we included the highway department with 5 of their permits that they currently have in an RT Vision permitting software. Also a liquor license for the auditor treasurer's office, and then for solid waste, 2 permits that they deal with. And then the idea would be, once we would be live and we'd be able to start understanding the software and becoming fluent in it, hopefully we could do some copy and paste without much cost to be able to continue to grow the number of permits and license applications for multiple departments that could be processed this way. The nice thing is with some of the items like liquor license, for example, the treasurer's office communicates with my department to make sure the property's on the up and up in terms of zoning before they bring those to the board. So the software would facilitate ease of those 2 departments working that workflow. Would be one of the efficiencies that we could realize. And then Andrea from the highway department is here too, in case you'd have any questions or things that you'd like to visit with her about as far as her department and what they might be able to use the software for.
Questions?
Yeah, I have a few. So Eric, the vendor that you were working with that hasn't panned out, have you discontinued that? Can you tell me how many, what the dollar figure was that you spent?
Fortunately, that was another governmental unit in the state of Louisiana. So the way that they structured their agreement was that we didn't pay anything until we went live with their software. So
Okay,
the only thing we've paid is mileage and travel expenses for a training that they provided a couple of years ago to us, but we've not incurred any other costs. And Jeff and I have visited about terminating that agreement. We wanted to see how the discussion this morning went, and depending on how that goes, I do have things I've started talking with the county attorney about to have him review that contract and make sure that we would cite the appropriate portion or portions of that contract to terminate it.
okay, thank you. And then my second question, I saw in the contract that they had travel expenses. Is that common in the contract?
Yes, that's typical of a vendor that they'll want to charge whatever they incur for travel expenses when they come provide on-site training.
Okay, then my third question was, is this, you put in your staff productivity efficiencies, so will this free up any staff time, do you think, or is it more because of customer service?
There will be staff time efficiencies gained. It's hard to put a number to that because our current software doesn't have the ability for us to collect metrics. But we've seen this just in what we've done in the last several years of allowing people to email applications to us and pay online through the auditor treasurer's credit card portal, as opposed to coming into the office and doing things at the counter. That's allowed us to do more volume with the same number of staff, and I would see that would only increase with a product like this, because people are always asking, can I just do this online? And so there's definitely a demand for it. And it automates a lot of things. So if they meet all the criteria, it just automatically processes it and sends them the permit, sends them notification, sends them the permit card. It allows them to schedule inspections. So potentially with our septic inspections, for example, we have all the contractors that call us in the morning to schedule their inspection for the day. They could potentially do that through an online tool instead. And just with helping us track, that would be another efficiency. So having things in the software and having it use kind of a tickler file system, to use an old school paper tracking mechanism, reference, things wouldn't fall through the cracks as much because the system's gonna remember it and give us a reminder of, hey, you need to do additional work on this one's still open.
So there are a lot of people filling out the apps by hand, and then you have to enter all that data into your database?
We have fillable PDFs that are available online, so that's the bulk of what we receive these days, and we'll have to key that into our permit software. It's not real intensive data entry, but there is some. So once we get the application completed, then we scan it and place it into our imaging archival software application enhancer. And that works well, but you know, it just has a PDF. You can't do anything with the data that's there. Where this,
With this new software, it would be much more efficient because you can.
yes, and it'll allow us to gather and review data and metrics that we run reports that we currently can't do. So for example, if the board was interested in new construction that took place in a given time period and you wanted to break it down between how much of that was new homes versus additions or alterations, currently that would be it's a manual process for us. We would have to go through each individual permit and tally that up, whereas with the software, we'd be able to select those subcategories of construction type when we have them make the applications, and then we'd be able to generate reports accordingly. So that would be a very nice tool that we haven't had.
So there's a couple of major coordinating issues that we want to consider, right? And while we looked at a couple of different vendors, we're using Tyler Payments because it integrates directly with our Tyler tax system. So when somebody now, it's online, if they make a payment via credit card or via ACH to their account, it's automatically credited to the tax account, right? So that was the major thing. The $46 million worth of taxes $50 million of taxes we collect for all the taxing entities and distribute. When someone makes a payment, it's crediting their account directly. And we chose to go with them versus another because another agency, we'd have to write a script and then do an update, every 24 hours we do a data dump and we update that. So somebody makes a payment in the afternoon and the other person comes home, makes a payment in the evening, and they make a double payment. Can't happen in the Tyler system because it's all integrated. That payment system we're going to use for everything else, so we can eliminate the current Forte payment system that we have, which isn't going to make a difference to anybody else the way they're processing. Internal processing will be the same. But we have an opportunity to do anything that we have kind of has to work with the things that we have. So any of these permits through this system or another system would get us to the point where they make an application, we determine that it's complete, or the workflow determines that it's complete, they can pay the fee, and then we do something, and then, we have to work through all the individual steps of all these things. But I wanted to show you, this is the city of Blaine, and they're using the IMS system. So you'll see that this tile format looks a lot like our GIS page, right? You can look at the different applets that you're looking at. So say you bought a property and you want to build a house and you need to make an application for a shoreland application, a conditional use, a driveway permit, any one of those things. You create an account in here and that populates, anytime you go to start an application, it automatically populates your information because you've put it in there. You log in as you. It makes it much simpler for people to access the multiple applications that they need. We can put in the documentation to say, if you're gonna do this, then you have to do that and that. You need your E911, you need your driveway permit, you need your septic permits, you need all of that stuff. It'll make it cleaner and easier for the users. It'll also make it cleaner for our staff, because they're only gonna have to touch them when they're done, when they're complete, or when they're ready to pay. Business contractor licenses, the renewal process for our waste haulers, and the business rental licenses for renewals of alcohol and tobacco can all be done in here. And people can get reminders from the system when the due date is approaching for them to renew that license. When we have out-of-county permits for solid waste dumping, everybody that's got a permit can be sent a reminder through the workflow that it's time to get your permit for next year. They pay it online. Our staff doesn't do anything with it. It just all happens internally. So there's a lot of things that can be coordinated and automated. So you asked the question, is this gonna reduce staff time? The best possible answer is probably that it's not going to add to staff time, and that we'll continue to have capacity that we have without adding staff into the future. There are certain things that will create some space, but mostly we're just gonna increase our capacity for staff to process work through something like this.
GIS won't go away, right?
GIS will not go away. Nope.
Even though you can access property through here.
And we may or may not, because we do our
Okay.
property, I don't know who they're using for GIS. If they're doing that, we will probably query from IMS back well, and we're not using Tyler for our GIS, we're using Esri for our GIS. So these major components, you learn as you're going through this, that decisions made a long time ago have an impact on what you can do going forward. If our Tyler was tied with if Tyler was providing the GIS, or it was integrated through Tyler, it would give us some more options on what we can do within Tyler relative to property maintenance. Tyler was one of the situations we looked at to do permitting. Truthfully, and I've told our implementer, I said the difficulty I had in implementing the payment system says I will never go through another Tyler implementation ever. So I told Eric, I said, pull that one. We looked at our website host. They have an integrated permitting system. Our agenda management system, our agenda management and our web hosting both have permitting type things. None of them got to the point, well, what really ended up happening is none of them got to the point of them representing themselves as being customer service focused, that everything you do with Tyler, if you change the parameter, they send you a bill. IMS has said that's not how they operate, which is why we're spending the amount of time we are in determining what the scope of projects are we want them to deal with. The latest proposal and scope, what was the element that we asked them to take out of the?
They had a nightly reporting provision for financial activity to our financial software that was removed, and then one of the.
So they had a proposed integration with our accounting system, right? And we don't need that. The way that we're working, we're doing that some other way. That would probably get in the way of us doing the work that we're currently doing relative to compiling data and making sure that it gets entered into there. So that's kind of the scope work that we're doing with this. There are a lot of things that we're doing. Most of the driveway stuff that we're doing, or the highway stuff that we're doing through another vendor. Maybe that stays with the other vendor, maybe it comes on here. Maybe it's the first thing we change, maybe it's something we change after we get some of the other stuff focused. Based on this proposal, they're proposing 40 weeks, I think, to do a full scoping of all of the workflows. And then when it's done, all of it will be ready. There's a lot of things that we don't have processes for. For somebody to fill out a marriage license, we just point them to a computer and we say, go fill that out online, and then bring it back to us. We can create a license tab in here where somebody wants to fill out a marriage license, and they go and they fill out the form and it gets submitted there, but they make the payment to us. So we capture another piece of that we were doing manually before. So all of these workflows are longer, shorter, more complex, less complex. And as Eric mentioned, when we get to the point where we've got what we think is 75 or 80% of this worked out, if we determine that we have another process that's very similar, you know, you have a process for widgets and then you want to do a process for little, you know, other pieces, well, you just clone that process and rename it and attach it to the right things. So it is expensive, but it's less expensive than if we went with Tyler. Their process, well, we were 3 years in implementing Tyler for our property record system, and over 2 years in implementing it for our tax system. And that costs a lot of money too, being in a process. Even this proposal being 40 weeks, well, that's a long time. And for us to make sure that that happens, it means the dedication of the staff to see the process through, and the identification of the right team of people to be working on that, so that every time IMS has something ready for us to review, we review and we test and we give them feedback and we go through the next part of the process. If we don't keep up with that, it becomes a problem. So it is, I would propose this, something like this would integrate well with the website, and we would basically redesign our county website is department-based, and we would probably shift to a focus of service bases, because people don't care what department they need to go. They need to know, how do I fill out a marriage license? Where do I fill out this application? How do I do that? They don't really care that they're standing at the right window, because most of it's being done electronically now. It'll give us an opportunity to review the website so that it functions much more directly with what people are expecting from us and can find the information more easily. And then finally, eventually, what I would suggest that we do, and this is where we have to, get the question earlier, if we take that annual fee and we put that in the IT budget rather than putting it on any one of the users or trying to split it out anyway, this is serving county taxpayers, right, and county visitors. It's not supporting one department or another department, it's supporting the whole thing. So I would propose showing that in the IT budget, rather than splitting it out and having anyone pay it directly. For the most part, if it was just environmental services, it'd come out of the general fund anyway. If it comes out of IT, it doesn't matter, that fund balances. Highway department, if we add costs there, we're gonna have to add levy there to offset that. So that doesn't necessarily make any sense. It seems like a central service, and I would lump it into IT as we go through that. But we'll also show that when we get to putting that first budget together.
The cost of software like it is, I think I brought this up before, is it time to start thinking of it as a capital item?
We already, relative to our accounting and our audit, we have to capitalize that cost and report based on that. We could certainly make a determination that we're gonna use capital funds to cover this, rather than put that in an operating budget. I can bring that whole IT budget back to you, this is July? I can work with Fred and try to get a cost breakdown and identify which things which we could consider under capital. If we take things that could be operating or could be capital and we use our capital funds for them, we've used them up, right? If we say $200,000 out of capital every year, that's gonna go to these things that could be capitalized costs, but could just be operating costs, it decreases our capacity to use them in the future. So it's certainly a question worth asking. The thing that makes more sense is the implementation cost is a one-time cost, as opposed to a licensing cost. If we take $100,000 from 2027 to pay for this, it's not committed in 2028. So that's one way.
That's what I was kind of thinking of, that initial cost only.
I'm actually hoping that we have some 2026 dollars that we can do a couple of projects with. This might be one of them. I would think by September, well, I'm hoping to get the June reports, financial reports, and have a good idea by the end of this month to say, these are some things on the capital list. Well, the air handling unit that went out, right? That wasn't on the list, but it's one of those things you gotta fix.
Because when you think of like virtual servers and cloud computing now, what you were paying for capital costs for hardware now.
Right, you're paying in
doing the same
contracts.
thing, you're just not paying for hardware anymore. At some points, with this is getting so convoluted that it could easily be considered a capital item.
Yeah, and I want to mention too that in talking with Lauren, she said from the Recorder's Compliance Fund that she would have up to 100K that she'd be willing to put toward this project out of that fund.
Oh,
So
that's good
that would
news.
help with the implementation cost.
So you have implementation services here of 117,800. Can we take that 16,000 off of that? Or what are you looking at for cost? Because you said it changed.
Yeah, I'll pass this out a second, and then I can go through that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you look at the cost, to implement Tyler. I mean, it's just as important as the brick and mortar you have sometimes.
So with this latest proposal that I received overnight, the implementation cost was reduced to 110,000 from 117,800.
Yep, thank you.
And they've kind of got it tucked in different pages. So the implementation cost is on page 11. The licensing fee, they reduced slightly. It had been 82,000 in the copy in the packet, and they dropped that to 79,500.
What page is that on, Eric?
15.
15? Thank you.
And then the other change was to the annual maintenance. They formerly had the first year at 65,000, and that was reduced to 59,000.
Is the second year the same?
No, they have a 5% annual cost of
Okay,
doing
okay, so that
business
affects, okay.
increase, which is what we found to be pretty common among vendors anymore.
So I know in some of the other, when we've implemented things, they've promised a lot of things on the front end, and we've found that they've been challenging to work with. Have you vetted this with any other counties that are using to find out?
There aren't any counties using them yet, but I did talk with the State Department of Labor and Industry contacts, and they spoke, what they had for feedback mirrored what we heard from IMS staff. And then I've also talked with the City of Rogers that is in the process of going with IMS, and also staff at Blaine, the City of Blaine, that Jeff showed their website, where they're further along in just starting to use IMS. And all the feedback was the same, positive, didn't have any, not one negative was mentioned.
Have they been in business a while?
I
I'll
couldn't,
look it up.
couldn't tell you exactly. I'd say it's within the last 10 years, the CEO had been, had spent his career working with other companies that had software solutions, and then decided to start his own and address some of the issues that he was finding recurring among the other companies. Their interface is definitely on the front end as far as technology of what interfaces look like if you compare them to some of the others that are using older systems, because they've been around a while and they don't know how to deal with, what do we do with all these existing customers that are accustomed to a certain interface. The one thing I like about it is, for our purposes, you stay on the same screen if you want to switch between viewing what the customer's able to see. It's a quick click, and then you're able to walk them through what they need to do to get an application submitted. Then it's another click back to viewing the staff screen, and then it's a third click to get into the admin portal to make editing adjustments, whereas with other software you have 3 separate web portals that you have to log into and remember passwords for. So that was one really nice feature of IMS's product.
It was founded in 2016, and the president, Vance Bradshaw, has over 20 years' experience.
So as Eric mentioned, the relevant Department of Labor and Industry, City of Blaine, City of Brooklyn Center, and the City of Rogers are on board with this now. I have been having conversations with them saying, you guys should really give us a discount and show and integrate what a county needs relative to an online system, and you could become members and contributors to AMC, and you would get a lot of business if you can come up with a solution that does this. Because in our research of what other counties are doing relative to permitting and combining permitting, it's either all over the board or everybody's saying, if you find a solution, let me know. I think we've kind of stumbled across one that has the potential for unifying most of this stuff. We had conversations and believe we're gonna be able to even use it as for campground reservations. So, not having to buy another system to be able to do that, but to have that part of the integration of what we're doing is useful and worthwhile. Anything that changes organizationally means that there's, change to overcome organizationally when we do that, so there will be, like I said, you have to have the right team in the boat to make this work, in much the same way that moving to Tyler or moving to UKG is a big change for people.
There's a county in Idaho that started using the software in 2021.
So the first on-site visit that they do for implementation, is that this 2 to 4 day visit, or is it just for the one, or how long did they say, do they anticipate being here to train individuals on the system?
Going off
page are
of
you on?
memory, I want to say it was a
I'm on page 11.
good,
Just reading this little bit here, but it says it includes one on-site visit, but that doesn't describe how many days that on-site visit is. It says other days can be requested, and that average is 2 to 4 days. So I'm just wondering, is the initial visit 2 to 4 days as well to train staff appropriately?
I believe that's roughly what I recall
Okay.
hearing from them when we met with them online.
Okay, all right. And I noticed on, I don't know what page this is, but page 18, for Hubbard County, it's 22,350 South Diamond Lake Road.
Yeah, that's what happens when they do that.
Where is that address at?
Diamond Lake Road is in Brooklyn Center. I think Diamond Lake Road is in Brooklyn Center, isn't it? So yeah,
Yeah,
they use templates.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they also have at least in the one that was in the work session, if this isn't implemented by April 29th, I think, the price was null and void, but now that you have an updated one.
Yeah, they said the pricing in this most recent would be valid until the end of August of this year.
Okay.
yeah, and that's what the first one says too, was
Yeah, but-
August 31st, 2026.
But earlier on in the contract, it had an April 29th date.
Yeah, when we first started conversations with them, they had a different earlier date in the year.
Okay.
I think they were,
Eric was working with them in April, and I put the brakes on, said we need to take another look and a bigger look and look for other options. And so for April and May, we did that, and by the time we got around to June, we were back to thinking this is probably the most likely candidate.
Where's the data currently posted at? And it says it's entitled to Microsoft Azure services.
yeah, it would be a cloud-based hosting. Our current data is on our servers and just locally stored.
So currently we're locally, but you're gonna switch it over to cloud then?
Yeah, I suppose you could possibly find a vendor that would work with local, but almost the majority anymore are going to cloud
Safer that way.
in theory.
Okay.
Well, it's really encouraging to me that you've found $100,000.
That helps a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, so then the budget would basically be the 59,000?
Would be the operational budget,
Yeah.
continuing starting in '27.
Yeah.
You know, there'd be that, and then the licensing fee would be due, on the front end as well, which is just under 80,000.
So someone applies for a building permit, how much of that process can be done in the comfort of their home then?
Well, currently, the best we have for remote applications is they have a fillable PDF that they can complete. They email it to us, we review it. Once we say it's good to go, then we send them instructions how to pay with a credit card online by email. They send us the receipt, and then we process and send them the permit. So it goes fairly smoothly with what we have, but this will definitely speed that up. Because they'll be able to monitor where they're at in the process with the software, as opposed to now, if they email us something, then we get an email or a phone call that says, where am I at, how long? And the software will tell them where they're at in the progression of their permit application.
Back of the house, we have a dashboard to see all the applications that are open and in which part of the process that they're in, which provides an opportunity to follow up with somebody who started the process but didn't get to the point of completing it or paying the fee, or, you know, we're not gonna eliminate bad actors who are more interested in doing what they want to do and less interested in willing to pay the after-the-fact fees, but if we make it easier for people and make that part of the front end of the county website, and like I said, if somebody creates an account and they need a driveway permit and they need a septic permit and they need this permit, the first 10 minutes of data entry are already done. They open it up, it populates who they are. We have yet to really have a good conversation about integration with parcels, and right now, none of our permits manually uploaded, loaded to be included with parcel records.
Yeah, we have to manually index them into our imaging software, and then that has an automatic connection to the GIS map.
So there's probably an opportunity to automate the imaging out of this permit system, which means that we would eliminate a good portion of the indexing portion of the process that we're doing relative to permits. Because when people look at the record, they want to see, when you look at a property, you want to see when was the last time the septic tank was inspected, or when was it installed? And that's come to be something people count on to be able to go to the county records and find. That takes a lot of time to index those things and get them loaded and uploaded. That's probably the biggest savings in your department, is the ability to automate that process.
Anything else? All right. So you're looking for a consensus, I suppose, to bring it forward, huh?
And the new date is what, end of August?
Correct.
So I would propose that we bring it the third Tuesday in August, because you're gonna get the budget proposal on the first Tuesday in August. And you'll be able to see where that is within this.
I see here that if this was to move forward, the kickoff would be in September of 2026. The go live would be May of 2027. And it says one on-site trip included for end-user training. And then I'm kind of getting the idea that it would include another trip for go live support. Is that correct? On page 9?
Yeah,
For
whether
the
it's,
timeline?
whether it's separate or,
Or is it part of the initial cost? I guess is
Together.
what I'm curious, or I want to avoid extra charges for something, you know?
yeah, I mean, they would, their time would be, part of the agreement. It would just, what would be additional would be the, you know, air flights, lodging, meals, rental vehicle.
This is, the way this is written is one combined trip. in that paragraph. One on-site trip included for end-user training and go-live support. So the intent is
Oh,
that,
okay,
that
to
would
do
be.
it all in one time
That would
frame.
be,
Okay.
the way this is written, that's one trip. And that's what's included in the implementation cost.
Okay.
The other numbers that say travel costs are billed
Yeah.
as incurred, it would be beyond that.
When Tyler was implemented, it was challenging for staff to find time to do the necessary work. Is this gonna be fairly easy for what they're asking, or is this gonna require a lot of overtime for staff to?
I don't know that we'll incur overtime. Having gone through this with that other software vendor, it was manageable, and IMS has told us they do 75% of the work, so they'll ask us questions. And what I liked with just some initial examples that they ran through with some of our existing applications, they aren't afraid to ask questions, and because they don't have it, this is how we do it in their head. They see things that we may not, and so they ask good questions. And so, for an example, I was wondering what to do with our compliance inspection reports that we receive for septic systems, because as Jeff mentioned, that's one of the things that the public really values, being able to access through the GIS map on the website. We don't have a permit application that they need to submit for that, they just turn it in. So IMS said, well, we can easily create a mechanism where they don't make an application, but it just says, click here to upload your compliance inspection report. So contractors would be able to put it in that way as opposed to sending us an email, which they currently do. So that's one example of the things I appreciated of how they operate, that they think out of the box and come up with suggestions, and they'll do that as well with workflow. You know, if we say we do it these are our steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, they might say, well, we could shorten that to 3 if you thought about doing it this way. So I appreciate that about the conversations we've had with them.
All right, everybody good with it coming third meeting in August?
Yeah, the only question I would have is if we come up with something at that meeting that isn't quite right, do we have time to still make the August 31st deadline?
I could put it on the first Tuesday at the end of the meeting after we've had our preliminary look. Yeah, I'm anticipating you are gonna get your first budget report on Friday before that meeting. So, yes, it gives us more cushion if I put it on the first Tuesday. And then you can see where that is relative to that. I can even make some comments as to where it's shown.
Okay. That was my only thought, 'cause like I said, then we're up
Doesn't matter
against
to
it.
me.
I will probably combine it and say if we're paying for the licensing fee or the implementation fee out of the recorder's compliance funds, that we would pay the other one out of capital in '27, and that we would show the annual fees in the operating budget in IT. That makes the most sense, but I will highlight those when we go through those. Because when you see a $60,000 increase in IT licensing fees, you're gonna go, well, that's a lot.
Yeah. All right. Everybody good? All right, motion to adjourn?
So move.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.
Eric, the bill that you made me aware of, I'm just letting you know, it will be paid in full before Friday.
Hubbard County,
you.
so this is my wife's farm.
Thank you.